Hello people, in this lecture we're gonna see how to connect, how to use Entity Framework in our application. First, let's create a brand new project. Let's use the DotNet MVC template, let's say Entity Framework example. Once you create your project, you can install the Entity Framework packages. Looking right here in dependencies, let's browse for Entity Framework. Here you have Microsoft Entity Framework Core. Use the same version as you're using in your project. In my case, I'm using version 8, so I will install the latest 8 version. Another mandatory package is the SQL tools. Let's install the same version. If you're using version 9, install the version 9. We will use SQL Server, so install the SQL Server provider. The same version as well. When you want to connect your application to a database, you must have a connection string. And this app settings JSON is the file that we use for storing the connection strings. Here, this app settings is for production. Let's use the development one. Let's say here. And connection strings, let's say default connection, as the connection string for the local database is really big. I will put it in the resources of this lecture so you can copy and paste it. The data source is local DB. The initial catalog, I write example entity. This will be the name of your database. These other parameters is just for local, so I hope you get it. Okay, let's continue. Now you must create a DB context. Let's create an application DB context. This class will inherit from DB context. You have to import this Microsoft.Entity Framework Core namespace. Now you have to add a constructor. This constructor will have a DB context options. And in the generic parameter, let's say application DB context, the name of our class. And let's say options. This will say to the base of my class will pass the same options to the base of my class. Now, this is enough for creating our DB context. Now you must add this DB context as a service in your application. Right here, before the builder build, let's add the DB context as a service. Add DB context. Now you pass to this generic parameter the name of the context that you created, application DB context. Let's pass an option as a lambda expression, and let's say options use SQL server, and the argument of the use SQL server, let's say builder configuration get connection string. Now to get our connection string, we must pass the name that we set here for my connection string, which is default connection. Let's grab it from here and paste it. Enough. Now you've already created your DB context. Let's create our product class. Right here in models folder, let's create a product class. Let's say int 64, let's say ID, public let's say a name, and let's say price. You must add this product to your DB context. Let's go again to our DB context. Let's add it as a DB set for context. Let's say DB set, and let's pass as generic parameter our product class. Now you already have a product table. Let's see if our code is working. Entity Framework has a really powerful feature called migrations. If you're using other ORMs, you would have to create the data table with the same name, with the same types, but Entity Framework solves it to you with migrations. How use migrations? First, you have to go to the package manager console and say add migration and the name of the first migration. That can be image. Here you see Entity Framework already creates your table. Here you can see the name of your table, the ID. Entity Framework is clever enough to identify the ID property will be your identity column. It creates the name and the price with the decimal and string type as well. Now to create a database and apply my migrations to my DB, let's call the command update database. You see, I've already created my database. To see that, you can just right click here in the view, SQL Server Object Explorer. And if you refresh this, you'll see the example entity database with my tables, my table products, and this table, which is the migration history. You'll see the columns, the ID, the name, the price, the primary key, which is my key to ID, and that's it for this lecture. In the next lecture, we're gonna see the commands to get, to post, to delete, in other words, the CRUD operations. See you again in the next lecture.